Puppet Company fanfare, but the Pandemonium fanfare, thanks to Bart and Matt. My name is John Bell. I wanted to welcome you to the exceptional opening of It's Always Pandemonium. Yay! Puppetry of Bart Roccoberton, standing to my left conveniently. It's so nice to see all of you here, UConn folks, Ballard Institute folks, friends, Puppet Arts alumni, Pandemonium veterans, and other collaborators of Bart over the years. I wanted to thank Emily Wicks, our manager of the Ballard Institute, Abby Bosley, our graduate assistant, Pat Coulter, our Waring Fellow, and all of the students who spent hours and hours and hours working on this exhibition, who I think Matt's going to thank profusely. Olivia Baldwin at the front desk, one of our many. I wanted to make a special welcome to Bart's wife Marjorie, and their daughter Rachel, and grandson Jonah. I wanted to let you know before introducing Matt, who's going to talk with Bart about the exhibition and give us a tour of the exhibition, that today we also have performances by the Stevens Puppets. They're doing Goldilocks and the Three Bears at 2 o'clock. So the show is sold out, I think, but maybe they just, I didn't know. Okay. But anyway, and this coming Wednesday at 7, our friend Dr. Matthew Cohen is going to talk about collective and individual agency in Wayang Kulit, which is Indonesian shadow theater. He's doing work at the Yale Art Galleries and their huge collection there, and he's going to talk about it, part of our public forum. So, wonderful, very exciting. We've been lucky to work with Matt Sorensen, who's graduating with an MFA in Puppet Arts. Around the Saranac Lake, Adirondack region. It's been a pleasure to work with him, and we're going to miss him when he goes off and does wonderful things like tour the show he made as his MFA project around New England, so keep that in mind. And his skills as a exhibition curator and designer match his skills as a puppet designer and creator and performer. So warm welcome to Matt.
Thank you, John. That was really lovely. I'm going to reiterate what John just said. It is incredible to have all of you here, and this turnout is exceptional. And it's really exciting, and a lot of it has to do with Bart over here. You can come a little closer. I'll even come to this side. Is that okay? Cool. Okay. So the reason that this exhibition came about for me was that I had been working as a graduate assistant here at the Ballard Institute with John and Emily and several other people, and I really enjoyed installing, and I said, hey, as an independent study for my MFA year, I would love to curate an exhibition, and here we are now. And it was really, really wonderful opportunity when they offered me the chance to do an exhibition on Bart's work, which is incredible. And it was very fitting because I've been learning from Bart the whole time that I was here, and a lot of these puppets that he has made are actually classroom tools. They're things that he teaches us with, the techniques. So I think that is really fitting and incredible. And
the past 2 weeks have been difficult in the classroom because I reach for a puppet and it's not there.
It's true, and we're grateful for it. So before we begin the tour that Bart and I are going to kind of do together, I just want to acknowledge some people, a lot of people who helped make this happen. First of all, I want to thank Dr. John Bell and Emily Wicks. They sort of the backbone of this process from beginning to end with late nights and label editing kinds of really interesting challenges that you don't think about as someone who kind of just puts things on the walls, but then there's all this other stuff that they orchestrate, which is incredibly thoughtful and really difficult. So thank you guys for that. Also on staff here at the Ballard Institute is Caleb Martinez, who has been incredibly helpful to me. He did a lot of schlepping. He also edited, kind of created the slideshow and the video reel that are available for your consumption throughout. Three people who have helped me incredibly with install and schlepping and doing a whole ton of work. Abby Bosley. Tracy Becker. And Noelle Williams. All three of them have been with me through thick and thin, basically throughout our entire career here as students, but through this process they've been invaluable to me, which is incredible. Also, Kat Foker has been other puppet art students that have pitched in and helped me out in a big way. Rob Cutler, Alicia Cooper, William Smith, Maggie Flanagan, Zach Broom, and also I got a lot of help from Paul Spirito over there. I really appreciate it. So I got to get a little closer with Ken Best as well, which is right here. He's a UConn PR, public relations manager, director.
No.
Well, he's the guy.
I write.
He writes.
I write the stuff.
He's the voice of PR.
Right. So he has been working with us to not only publicize this event, but also he's been working on a piece about Bart in the grander scheme of things. So I encourage you to grab his ear and talk to him, especially if you want to share thoughts. Also, someone who has been incredibly helpful is Rachel Roccoberton. And she connected me with several different Pandemonium Puppets alums. Who are a lot of them are here. Raise your hand if you were in Pandemonium Puppets. So the reason that Rachel connected them to me was that they were able to give a little supplemental information about the shows that you see. So there are certain audio tags connected with certain labels, and you can, with your cell phone, you can access their anecdotes, which are really lovely.
Very nice.
Oh, and really, most of all, Bart Roccoberton. It was really fascinating. I mean, you get a lot from Bart in class, but then the work that we did preparing for this exhibit, I basically sat down with Bart for a collective of 5 hours and got his life history and the history of all of this really incredible work. And that has informed so much of what I've already learned. It's been really great, so thank you. Without any further ado, let's begin the tour.
Yay!
So, this is the appropriate place to start the tour. This room kind of represents not only Bart's work with Pandemonium puppets, but also the inception of Bart as a puppeteer and his work with puppets. So over in that corner, that display case, those puppets are all from Bart's MFA project. There's actually 2 different shows he did for his MFA project, and those are all from one of them, which is L'Histoire du Soldat. So Bart got his MFA at UConn, just like a lot of other people here. And this was his project, and he worked with some other UConn students who went on to work with Pandemonium puppets and also became really famous and impressive puppeteers in their own right.
I'll point out Rachel Prescott Butterworth here built all the costumes and helped me build the puppets.
Oh, wow.
Yay! Moving forward, unless there was anything else. Okay, cool. So, Pandemonium Puppets was kind of in conceived by Bart and Brad Williams and Marge. And it began as kind of like a summer gig while you were still a student, right?
You know, first show was July 4th, 1976.
So bicentennial. And Bart and Brad had some puppets that they had already built, and their very first show was just taking those puppets and creating new works and new stories out of that. And that was called Potpourri.
And I'd point out that Richard Termini, who many of you know, was part of our first performance, and shortly thereafter he came to Marge, Brad, and I and said, "This is not my type of theater."
So after Potpourri was over, the very first kind of official Pandemonium show that they created new puppets for was, oh my god, I know it, don't tell me, Pantomime. And those little wooden planchettes, they're like lumberjack style puppets that are made of turned wood pieces, are puppets that were created for that performance. Anything you want to add about that? Cool. They're also in a case with a really lovely signed corrugated tin that was designed by Brad Williams, and it was stuck on Brad Williams' band, which also was the Pandemonium touring band.
And it was put up in July of 1976, and on it you'll read, "Serving New England since 1976.
Chronologically speaking, Elvintide is next. Yes. Yes. So this center case is Elvintide. A lot of the Pandemonium shows were a series of vignettes. So there were usually 3 or 4 performers, and they would perform kind of in tandem, and there was always some live music happening that all the performers were switching off, whether they were a puppet or playing music, running around and being generally entertaining and kind of kooky. But the interesting part about the vignette shows is that they could tailor them to the venue that they were playing. For instance, if there was a puppet or a show that was a little more adult or a little scarier to younger kids, they would omit that piece from that tour, from that particular day.
We performed the same show for a grammar school in the morning and a college at night. You pull out one story, pop in another story, and we would frequently be asked, do you have a kid show? So we just performed that one for the grammar school.
The next Pandemonium show is Fabula, to my left. And Fabula was a series of fables and another vignette show. And a lot of the source material was Aesop's fables or world stories. So we've got The Lion and the Witch Frog and The Fox and the Crows and The War of the Mice and the Weasels on display here. And also our friend, the monkey up there, is from Fabula as well. Cool, you're doing fine. Thanks. I don't know why I'm so nervous about it.
Got money for followers by next, feel free.
Yeah, and any informal kind of additions are welcome as well. I appreciate it.
That box over there weighs about 5,000 pounds.
Yeah, and Abby and Tracy and I can tell you getting it in that case was no easy piece of labor either.
Bart would take one end, and Jolyn and I, or Bonnie and I, or Margie and I would take the other end.
Right, when we built them, Brad Williams and I decided we needed touring trunks, and so we built 4 of them. We wanted to be able to carry 2 shows at any given time, and as we were getting the final screws put in, Brad said, "When you measured the van, was this?" I said, "I didn't measure the van, you did." We learned that we could only carry 3 of the boxes, not all 4.
People used to say to us, "Oh, that looks like so much fun." And Jamie and I developed all these retorts that we never set out loud to say, like, yes, our favorite fun time is loading the boxes into the van after doing 3 shows in an ice storm.
Down the fire escape.
Oh, yeah.
the next show up on the tour is Tales of the Leather Man, which was a system of vignettes that were specifically tailored to New England folklore. So the legend of the Leather Man, he's a real person, an actual person, but he's a legend in his own right. He was a gentleman that was dressed in head to toe, or from head to toe in leather, and he would wander the land.
He walked on a
landscape.
33-mile circuit that his,
No, more than 33.
more than 33, maybe 33-day, 33-day circuit.
This is why I have them
And
here.
he had touched into Middletown and then the western half of Connecticut. There's a
Out to
couple-
Austin, New York and
Yeah.
back. And he was a Frenchman who had married into a wealthy family, and his father-in-law gave him his leather business, which he ran into the ground in a year. He came here as penance, dressed in leather from head to toe, and wandered. And there are lots of wonderful legends about him.
Yeah.
And we chose to use him sort of as bookends. He never spoke. So what did he see? What did he hear? Maybe these are some of the stories.
You remember the song, Bart?
If I had a guitar. One misty morning when cloudy was the weather, I chanced upon a ragged man, clothed all in leather, clothed all in leather with a cap beneath his chin, singing, how do you do, and how do you do, and how do you do again.
You got that. That's excellent. Baseball God got that too. Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So Tales of the Leather Man were, like Bart said, it was kind of bookended by the Leather Man, but there were other stories. Dan Drummer, the Yankee peddler, the guy in the red vest,
Andrew Barry played him too.
Andrew played him.
Yeah.
And he was a character that was kind of like a shystery businessman, and he got the audience all fired up. He was kind of an interstitial character. And these items here are from Jedediah and the Devil. And Jedediah made a pact with the devil, and for his soul, right? Yeah. And when Jedediah died, the devil came looking for it, and Jedediah said, "You say the line better than I can remember it."
Sorry. Devil, you're a gaming man. What if we run a race for my soul? And you said. Well, they run a race.
Right, they run a race.
And because the devil is in cold New England air, his eyes are a little foggy. And Jedediah picks up pumpkins along the way and carves them and sets them and keeps running. And the devil stops and talks to the pumpkin for a while and realizes it's the pumpkin. And we found this story on Cape Cod originally, and the race ran from Sandwich up to Brewster, up to Provincetown. And when they got to Provincetown, Jedediah said, "Okay, I'm done. You win. Take me to your home." The devil said, "This is my home." So we found a couple versions of it in New England, and so any state that we were in, we'd start in the town that we were performing in and run towards the state capital. Do you remember the?
Oh, yeah.
Go for it. We're running towards Hartford.
Yeah, no, and he was just saying, you know, like, I've got you this time, Jedediah.
Take me to your home.
But this is Hartford. We are home. I mean, that was...
You've run a good race with style and grace, and your wits you've surely shown. But
yeah.
you've made a big mistake, you know, for I do not live down below. Hartford is my home. Come on along to the state capitol. I do my best work there.
And because we were so often in Connecticut, the last few towns would be usually Wethersfield and something else. And Bonnie and I can never drive through there without going, Wethersfield! Safety in Wethersfield! Just, you know, that was 35 years ago.
Well, let's all move into the next gallery and we'll continue the tour.
It's good.
Well,
Chronologically and flow-wise, I was gonna There's not kind of on the correct, but. All right, I'm gonna come stand over here. So moving on, in 1980, Bart and Margot Rose and a few other really well-renowned puppeteers had gotten together, and it was when Frank Ballard was getting kind of set up to retire from UConn, and they were talking to UConn about the future of the program and kind of trying to ensure that it would have longevity. And there wasn't a whole lot of response from UConn at that point. So Margot Rose and Bart worked together on approaching the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center about establishing a program there that would complement what was happening here at UConn. So under Frank Ballard, UConn's puppet program was very technical and building, and what Bart and Margot put together was a little bit more about developing artists and giving artists a voice to develop their narrative and their own work. So that was the focus of IPA, or the Institute of Professional Puppetry Arts, which was accredited through Connecticut College, but it was housed at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center and funded by the O'Neill as
By
well.
me knocking on doors.
Right. So what we have here is a collection of press items that all have to do with IPA, and also the squirrel and the dragon here are both pieces that are from the China project, which was when Bart and a board member from the O'Neill, refresh me on his name, Steve Woods, were trying to collaborate to develop a relationship with some puppeteers in China to kind of educate them about American culture and to combine forces to create something that would be not only educational but kind of culturally unifying between America and China. So Bart and Steve went over to China and they were scouting out talent, and it was the National Shadow Theater?
Beijing's National Puppet Arts.
Beijing's National Puppet Arts. They kind of did a performance for Bart and Steve, and at the end of the performance, Bart had his little notebook that everyone knows so well, and the pieces that stuck out to him the most were all performed by one puppeteer, Hua Zhang, who later went on to come to UConn and get her MFA, and also has been kind of a lifelong collaborator of Bart's. So that name's going to come up a lot more in this room. So the China project was televised, and it was recorded here at the O'Neill.
At Sonolith Studios in Waterford.
Okay, Sonolith Studios in Waterford. Sorry about that. And it was never shown in China. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. This gentleman up here, that's a politician from a show called The Last Enemy. This is a lot newer. This isn't O'Neill related.
The project went through the O'Neill, but I was working here at that time.
Cool. Do you want to say anything about it?
Yeah, it was started by the creative arts team of NYU, and creative arts team was renowned for doing inner city summer programs to help inner city kids express their angst about living in the inner city. And they decided to up the game a little bit and focus on the Middle East. And so they wrote a play dealing with bus bombings, extremism, and terrorism, and then went to the Middle East and negotiated for 6 months to find actors from Palestine, Jordan, and Israel who would work together. When that was finally done, the piece was taken to England, and Rob Saunders, one of our alumni, was working with me. I sent him over with some puppets to get them going. The rehearsals then moved to the O'Neill Center, where we added more puppets and masks and shadow puppets. And the show was then performed at the UN and in Jerusalem, Ramallah, and Amman. And this is a very different time, a different world than today. The tour was very successful. King Hussein of Jordan saw the show and funded it to tour again. This all took place before the Second Intifada.
So the rest of the puppets in this room all kind of correlate to Bart being at UConn. Some of these projects were UConn productions, and some of them were brought to UConn through Bart. So people would approach Bart, as they often do, about building a puppet or designing or creating something. And as Bart is wont to do, he turns it over to give his students an opportunity to learn and to get this work experience. So this lady to my left here, the Red Queen, was a project that Bart was approached about, but he developed it with some of his students here.
Nerney and Ulysses Jones.
And Tom Cariello, who is a UConn alum and was one of Bart's classmates, was in charge of, what's the name of it? Corporate Scenic Graphics, which is a company that builds props and items for corporate events like conferences and meetings and that kind of thing. So the Red Queen was actually built for State Farm Insurance, and they put together an enormously lavish Broadway-style musical. Look up. Yeah. Which was written by Broadway composers, and the cast was also a lot of Broadway favorites. Alice Ripley from Sideshow and from Next to Normal is in this as Alice, oddly enough. And Alice is learning how to be the best State Farm Insurance agent. And the Red Queen is resistant to Alice. She says she doesn't need any insurance. Nobody's going to kill the queen. Off with her head. I'll sing it later. It's stuck in my head all the time. But this particular production happened at a convention in Las Vegas and in Chicago. Very cool. Moving on. Will you talk about Nop and Nam a little bit?
Yeah. These characters here are from a new play called Rhymes with Evil that was written by Charles Traeger, who I also had met at the O'Neill Center. And it was performed at the American Theater Festival in New Hampshire. The basic story is there is a school teacher in the Midwest who is too creative for his town, and so he's fired. And so we catch him at home creating things, talking to his little daughter. And these two characters are sort of a Punch and Judy, Midwestern Punch and Judy character. They argue constantly. Nop jumps on top of Nam's head, and can I move the puppet?
Sure.
Fine. Look at that. I started thinking, if Marge jumped on my head, I'd do more than go, oh! So I was thinking about this, what can I do to make his head change? I had one actor serving as puppeteer doing the two puppets. And started thinking, and in my imagination, I actually went back to my second grade classroom. When I was in second grade, Bic pens came out with what they called the Bic Click, which was a ballpoint pen. You could push the button down, the cartridge went down, push it again, it went up. Same as other ballpoint pens, except Bic put it into clear plastic. And I can remember watching this thing, and probably the reason I remember is that I got in trouble for doing it and had to write 100 times, I will not play with my pen in the classroom. Well, some 15, 20 years later, I built it into this puppet. Going down through the head, there's a rod with a spring around it. The hat is fabric. When she jumps on his head, the fabric collapses, jaw drops, the eyes roll back. And then you get a good, oh! Right? And then after we finished the show, I went down to New Jersey and found my second grade teacher and said, there, I used it. This show was intended to be a vehicle for Robin Williams on Broadway. Unfortunately, Robin got this contract for doing Mrs. Doubtfire, and so the show never went to Broadway. That enough?
That's great. I'm just going to cut through here.
Stay.
These masks are from the Coventry Cycle, and it was a production that was directed by UConn performance faculty member Jerry Krasser, and it went to the 1998 Theater Festival in Quebec. And it was called the Coventry Cycle, and it was based on
Mystery plays.
All the mystery plays, but these particular items are Cain and Abel. And Kane, I really loved because he was performed with a relaxed face for most of the show. And then right before he gets enraged and kills his brother, we get the angry eyes going on there.
That was hidden under a turban. So as he went to slay his brother, the actor threw his head back, the mask flipped down, and he came back around, so the audience never saw the transition.
Nice. I'm going to transition into the Firebird, but I definitely want you to talk about it. But Bart did his sabbatical in Taiwan with the puppet company Udu Yo O, which means the puppet and its double. And UConn Puppet Arts alum Joe Chang was the head of this all-female puppet company. So in 2006, she was contracted by the National Symphony of Taiwan to create this spectacle that was Stravinsky's The Firebird. And she said, I will only do it if Bart can come and direct. And I'm going to turn that over to you now.
And of course I said yes, and I took my first sabbatical.
First and only.
Yeah, my first and only. I've been here 28 years. It was a production that went into the National Theater of Taiwan in Taipei. The stage is the size of the Metropolitan Opera House. How big is that, Ian?
It's pretty big.
Pretty big.
40 feet tall.
Yeah.
Really big.
Okay.
Really big, okay. When I first saw it, I said, how are we going to do a puppet show on this stage? By the time we moved into the theater, our sets and our performances were too large. We had to condense them. Worked with a cast of 25 and had a mixture of contemporary puppeteers, traditional puppeteers, contemporary dancers, ballet dancers, actors, and clowns. And I tried to use each of their individual skills within the characters, and you can see up on the video there a number of the performances that took place. It was a 2,200 seat theater, and we sold it out for all the performances. We actually had to add performances.
There were at least 4 shows that I saw.
That you saw, yeah, there were a couple beyond when you
Yeah.
got there. Yeah. And Udu Yo O now, Joe Chung, who is the director of Udu Yo O, has now established a puppet colony northeast of Taipei, where she is inviting international artists to come together and work. It's a really exciting resource, and she's one of ours.
Yeah. Great. So moving on, this particular piece, not only did I want to include it because it was a collaboration that Bart involved his students with. We'll talk about the show first. It was the Silk City Barbershop Chorus out of Manchester, Connecticut. And every year the Barbershop Chorus would do a show, and they would bring in international talents from the barbershop world. And this year in particular, they wanted to do a show that was based on puppetry. So they selected music that was puppet inspired or dealt with puppets. The show was called I'm Your Puppet. So they approached Bart about working on it, and then Bart, of course, brought in some students to work on it as well. This is Connor. Connor is a striped polecat, and he served as a host for the evening. He was performed by Shane McNeil, who graduated 2 years ago. Caleb Martinez and Nick Parks were also involved, and Chris Mullins was directing with you as well. He was co-director.
Anna Crotchin.
And Anna Crotchin. The prominence of Connor in our lives is because he's in the classroom, and if you've taken paper sculpture with Bart, this is a really good example, and it's a final project. What I didn't talk about in the first room was Albert Roser, who was one of Bart's biggest influence in his career. And Albert Roser was a German marionettist, and he had a paper sculpture technique. So what the paper sculpture technique is, and yes, please correct me if I'm wrong, but let me give it a shot.
Oh, I hear what you do. I'm grading you.
If you look at any object, you'll see that it's made of certain shapes, and it's usually like a cone or a cylinder, and you can kind of break down any living being out of those shapes. So then you take a piece of paper and you turn it into a cone, or you turn it into a rod. And then with scissors and tape and imagination, you can kind of get it into a shape. So this little fellow here is a paper sculpture. He's not the original, but he is what you would do if you were trying to devise what the puppet would look like, right? So this is the sculpture. And then you cut it apart and turn it into a flat pattern. And the flat pattern is here. This is the real flat pattern for Connor. And from there you can blow it up or you can put it on a material. So this flat pattern was enlarged and transferred onto this brown paper for Connor's head. And then once Bart was happy with the way that that looked, he took it, flattened it out, and he puts it on, this is L200 impact foam, which is in the soles of your sneakers. But you can use a variety of different materials. You can do cardboard or fabric or foam or anything like that. And then you take the flat pattern and you reassemble it the same way you took it apart, and you can make lovely freestanding structures like this.
Good, good. Yeah, the one thing I'd add is that the sculpture is done with one piece of paper. Okay, that is the challenge. And it wasn't until Matt got this exhibit up that I realized how much paper sculpture I've been doing in my career. The Red Queen, the Politician, the entire polar bear is all paper sculpture. You know, the clock tower figures here, the puppets, the human puppets from the Eight Immortals, and many of the Pandemonium puppets. So I guess Albert really was a big influence on my life.
For sure.
You want to talk about Scholastic?
Sure. Scholastic was a felt that was embedded with a plastic colloid, and we would cut it to the pattern of the paper sculpture. Originally, we would use it like paper mache, where we'd put it onto a clay model. The horrible thing about Scholastic is that you had to dip it into acetone first to melt the plastic, and then lay it onto the model. With the paper sculpture, we could cut the pattern and get it fixed up very quick and leave the acetone give off quickly. And in 1990, they stopped making Scholastic as we were going into creating the production of Christmas Carol, where I was going to build 50 masks out of it. And I called the company in Germany and said, how dare you consider my health? And they said, no, it's not that. We have to work with nitrocellulose in the manufacture, and we didn't want to risk our buildings. And so economy I couldn't fight, so we tried to find other things. Eventually, Albrecht and I came up with a putty that we now use that we put inside the paper and have made it a very friendly process. Though recently I had to make one of these really, really quick, and I have a box of what we call the gold stuff, Scholastic. And I said, okay, I'm going back to Scholastic. And within 15 minutes I was going, oh my God, never again. So yeah, goodbye Scholastic.
So, moving on. When Bart joined the faculty here at the University of Connecticut, it was customary for his predecessor, Frank Ballard, would do full productions, and he would design and direct and conceive these whole productions. And that was kind of what would happen. And then when Bart started working here, keep in mind that when he was working with IPA, it was all about developing artists and their voice. So naturally, Bart was resistant to falling into what Frank was doing, of being the big guy who makes all the shows and making all the puppeteers make his stuff. So Christmas Carol was really the only big CRT production that Bart was directing and designing and conceiving and mixing music and creating everything for. But Christmas Carol was huge, as you can imagine a Christmas Carol would be. And the cast was over 40 people, not only UConn students, but also people from the community. There were a bunch of children and a lot of live musicians from the community that joined them. But Bart kind of put this show together and adapted it from Dickens' novel, but he also was a big fan of these two pub singers.
Brandon Roberts, Tony Brand and John Roberts, two Englishmen.
So he works with a music professor here at UConn.
Who's in the back?
Who is in the back.
Ken Clark?
Hi. Welcome.
Yeah, I would say Ken Clark was a true collaborator in this. I had ideas, And Ken bought into them right away, and he understood the sense of what I was trying to do. I mean, we tried to create a ghost story, as Dickens intended the story to be. Our intention was to scare the audience as much as possible. And Ken did some remarkable work with the arrangements of the music, and it was a 2-hour show, and fully an hour of it was music. But it wasn't musical theater. Okay, it was also, I didn't call it puppet theater, it was whole theater. It was using every element of theater to create good theater.
Up on the screen now.
Okay?
So for this production, I told you there was a cast of 40 people, and there were as many masks for all of the humans of London. So Bart used straight up puppets for all the ghosts and other worldly figures, but then every human figure and every citizen of London was a mask performer as well. So on top of the Scrooge masks that you see here, there were 40 plus more.
Yeah, nearly 50 masks.
And they did face casts of everyone to build the masks off of, including the children and everybody who was in the show. Moving forward, over here. So in 1999, this is another mention of Hua Hua. Hua Hua was teaching a lot of Chinese puppet theater techniques as a student in UConn, and they were learning a lot of these techniques, and Bart was like, hey, why don't we give them a practical application for the Chinese puppet theater techniques? And they decided to develop, well, they pitched a
Pitched to the
show.
department head the story of the 8 Immortals, and it was denied, so we decided to do it anyway. And we had no budget, so we used to get donations, a van full of donations of paper and cardboard from International Paper. So we kicked into doing the show using paper sculpture for the heads. The bodies are basically boxes. My brother's father-in-law had worked in the fabric industry, and he had gave me a huge roll of interfacing, so all those boxes are covered with glue and interfacing. Naga, the creature up above, as you can see, is just cones made out of cardboard. And we brought the show to the stage. One of our seniors at the time, Matt F. Green, wrote the script, and he wrote it as a kung fu movie on stage. And we had a ball performing it. And one of the joys about it, I don't see the poster up, but Bobby Moynihan from SNL actually designed the poster for the production.
So yeah, I love to stress that this was a zero budget show, and I think it's one of the most beautiful and diverse shows that we have on display. And Bart has a lovely anecdote. After they finished kind of working on these more developed paper sculpture, cardboard-based puppets, he was having his lunch, and he was like, oh, what are we going to make all the demons out of? And then he looked down in the garbage, and there was a wadded up piece of brown paper that you could kind of see the beginnings of a face in. So he said, we've got it. So all of the demon characters, you can tell, are kind of brown paper and glue sticks that were found in supply. Everything here, including the paint and the cardboard, was available through donation or it was lying around, and I think it's super impressive. Oh, and these photographs are the 8 Immortals themselves, which John and Bart went over to China and installed them in a museum exhibition.
In Chengdu.
In Chengdu.
They're in the permanent puppet exhibit in Chengdu now.
So they're over there, living it up.
They went home.
They went home, for sure. Moving forward, here's some more UConn collaborations that Bart kind of spearheaded, but didn't necessarily do the building on. So Arthur Fiedler here was for the Boston Pops, and the conductor of the Boston Pops approached Bart first about having Bart read "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," and Bart said, "No, let's do something different." So the Arthur Fiedler puppet actually was designed by Bart with Sarah Nolan, a UConn alum, and it was mostly fabricated by Sarah with some tweaking. And this puppet Bart used to conduct the Stars and Stripes Forever.
Yeah. We were invited to do three performances in Symphony Hall in Boston. And we added our production of Peter and the Wolf that Mark Gale had designed in the 90s for us. And we were invited also to create new pieces, so using the music of Leroy Anderson, which the Pops owned, so there were no rights involved in it. I held a seminar class with the students. This was a project that was offered to me, but I saw it as an opportunity for the students, so we did a semester-long process of developing stories for this music, and we chose 6 of them, which we pitched to the Pops Orchestra, and they accepted them, and we went about designing and building them. So it was, yeah, it's my project, but it's student created, actually Caleb Martinez voiced Arthur Fiedler in narrating Peter and the Wolf. But the last concert, the staff came and said, we want Arthur to conduct Stars and Stripes. And throughout our rehearsal process, I had been saying to the kids, you know, you have to learn how to read music. You know, I'm looking at Leroy Anderson scores, I understand when things are coming up. You guys don't get it, you're listening, you're counting, you have to learn how to read music. And when they came and said this, I turned to the students and said, guess what? I get to do this. I can read music. And so we conducted Stars and Stripes.
It's up on the screen right now.
Yep.
It's up on the screen right now.
Perfect. Yeah, so they actually were performing directly in front of the Boston Puppeteers, or Bart was conducting in front of the orchestra.
Yeah, we addressed the puppeteers, and when they said they wanted to perform in front of them. Usually when we do Peter and the Wolf, we set up above and behind the orchestra, so you have to look through the instruments to see the puppets. They wanted us in front. We said, okay, well, we're going to be wearing our blacks. They're going to be in their blacks. Of course, it was the first concert where they changed to their summer whites. So it really stood out. That's right. And his son and family were there. No, Arthur passed in the 90s.
Moving on, these small rod puppets are from a PBS television program called Between the Lions. People recognize that. This is exciting. Good.
We've got one of the lions here.
Oh, hi, Pam. This is really exciting. So, Between the Lions was a show based on the New York Public Library, and it was puppetry and animation. And this particular set of puppets is from a story within that show called Sad Dad. And Bart and Hua Zhang kind of designed them together. Hua did the aesthetic design, and then Bart created all the mechanisms. So all of these puppets also have different mechanisms that make them do different things for the story.
The story is a Russian story, a folk tale that we've also found in Appalachia. But Hua used the paintings of Chagall as a design influence.
And David Regan, another collaborator of Bart's and UConn alum, designed some elaborate sets for the filming of this program. And there were several UConn Puppeteer alums who also were involved with the performing of this piece.
Yeah, they performed and managed the show. They didn't design puppets for the show.
Okay.
They managed, Jared Jenkins was one of the managers of Between the Lions. And then, Pam, help me at this time. Jen was there, Jim, Tim.
Jim Nappy,
Yeah,
Tim Lagasse.
I think they were the UConn guys there at that time. And now you're part of it as well.
Cool. This next piece to the right is called Nu Hua. And this is a puppet that was from Hua Zhang's MFA project while she was here. So she built and designed the production, but Bart directed the show. And also, Hua got booked for a professional gig in France.
With Tam Dun, the composer, he booked her to do part of his production called The Gate, and it overlapped rehearsal period for this. So that's when under David Stern, who's department head at, were you, David? Right there, we worked out with Hua that we thought that she should pick up the offer by Tam Dun, and so I was put in as director.
And he finished the production for Hua. And she saw it and she liked it.
Yeah.
So those are my Easter egg puppets up there. There's some portraits of Bart Roccoberton. The first one is made by Mary Nagler, and the one to its left is Frankie Cordero, and they are both UConn Puppet Arts alums. I know the Mary Nagler puppet was presented to you as on your 25th anniversary of teaching here at UConn
In 2015.
I don't remember the story of the Frankie Cordero puppet.
Frankie just wanted to do something for me before he graduated.
Okay,
Because we really worked to get him graduated.
great.
And he's now off doing marvelous things. They've actually created a character for him on Sesame Street.
Nice. That's really great. So the final two pieces in the exhibit that I want to address, right in front of me is Milky White from Into the Woods, a musical by Sondheim. Milky White was Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk's cow. And in the narrative of Into the Woods, which is a lot of Grimm brother stories kind of woven together, Milky White also was one of the ingredients of a magical spell that the witch was trying to concoct. And all of the hair is yellow as corn, cape is red as blood,
The slipper is pure as gold.
yes, and
Cow
cow is white as milk. So they fed all of the items to Milky White, and then the milk that Milky White produced was the magical potion. And UConn did this production twice. The first time was in 1993, and the second time was in 2005. And this puppet also made a cameo appearance in 2015's Spamalot when they threw it over the castle wall. And the other UConn production that they contracted Bart to kind of build a puppet for that wasn't a puppet arts production was The Winter's Tale, Shakespeare's play. And you know, Shakespeare's most famous stage direction ever was Exit Pursued by Bear. And it was more of a plot device than anything else in the show. But one of the Sicilian lords that was enacting kind of the will of the king to steal his wife's baby, who he suspected her of being of infidelity, steal the wife's baby and drop it off in some remote location. So he had done this terrible deed, and then immediately this bear comes on and chases him off stage and mauls him.
This is the only Shakespeare production in my memory that we've ever done in the studio theater. So you can imagine how much of the stage that puppet took up.
Oh my gosh.
So that piece in particular I love because you can kind of tell, but it's made out of plastic bags that Bart kind of tore up and attached. But the bear had a collective of like 30 seconds of stage time in the show. How long did you work on it?
About 2 months.
Yeah. So I encourage everyone to have a look around, grab Bart or another Pandemonium person or another alum that's around and have a good time and share stories. I love that we're here together in this celebratory kind of fashion. Do have a look through the IPA press clippings because they're really impressive. We can turn up the volume on this super cut here so you can see a lot of the really lovely productions. They're mostly music based, so the music would be really helpful. But thank you so much and enjoy.